Welcome to This Week in Royal History, where we delve into the captivating stories of royals from around the world and across the centuries. Join us as we explore their profound impact on history and society through their triumphs and tragedies. These royals have shaped the world we live in today, leaving behind legacies that continue to inspire and intrigue us. So sit back and relax and journey with us through time as we uncover the enchanting and sometimes tragic lives of the royals who captivated our hearts and imaginations throughout the ages.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Yolanda of Aragon was born on the 11th of August in 1384 to John I of Aragon and his second wife, Yolanda of Bar. She was the couple's first child, but had an elder sister from her father's first marriage. In 1400, 16-year-old Yolanda married Louis II, Duke of Anjou and King of Naples, which she protested. However, they would end up having a happy marriage with 5 children. When her father died, Yolanda's uncle claimed the throne of Aragon. Upon his death and the death of her elder sister, the throne remained empty for 2 years before her cousin Ferdinand was elected King of Aragon. Aragon always favored male heirs over females. Yolanda believed her sons had a better claim to the throne, and they used the title Kings of Aragon, but they never had any power in the land. They did, however, have fiefdoms throughout France that were uncontested, which included Provence, Anjou, Lorraine, Bar, and Valois. Her husband died in 1417, and she acted as regent for her young son. Yolanda was instrumental during the 100 Years' War and supported the Dauphin Charles, future Charles VII of France, betrothing her daughter, Marie of Anjou, to him in 1413. They married in 1422. She financed Joan of Arc on her mission to Orleans in 1429, which was a French victory and allowed Charles to be crowned King of France that same year. Yolanda died on the 14th of November, 1442, at the age of 58. Interesting fact, Yolanda's grandchildren included Louis XI of France and Margaret of Anjou, Queen Consort of England, wife of Henry VI. Mary of York was born on the 11th of August, 1467, to Edward IV of England and Elizabeth Woodville at Windsor Castle. She was their second daughter and child. In 1480, she was created Lady of the Garter alongside 2 of her sisters. Mary died on the 23rd of May, 1482, at Greenwich, and was buried in St. George's Chapel. She was only 14 years old. Isabella Clara Eugenia of Spain was born on the 12th of August, 1566, to Philip II of Spain and his third wife, Elizabeth of Valois. She had a younger sister born in 1567, and her mother died in 1568 during childbirth. Isabella and her sister received a good education and were close to their stepmother, Anna of Austria. Isabella's father claimed the French throne for her in 1589 when her maternal uncle died. But French followed Salic law and she could not inherit. Henry III of Navarre was the eventual ruler and crowned in 1594. In April 1599, 33-year-old Isabella married Albert VII, Archduke of Austria. They had 3 children who all died young. Before her marriage, her father ceded the Spanish Netherlands to her and her fiancé. Isabella and Albert ruled jointly until his death, after which she became governor of the Netherlands. During their reign, the court of Brussels became one of the foremost political and artistic centers in Europe. Their reign is considered the golden age of the Spanish Netherlands. Isabella became a nun in her later years and died on the 1st of December, 1633, in Brussels at the age of 67. After her death, the Netherlands reverted to the Spanish crown, as she had no living children. George Augustus Frederick, future George IV, was born on the 12th of August, 1762, at St. James's Palace in London, as the first child to George III and his wife, Charlotte. He was created Prince of Wales shortly after his birth to signify that he was the heir to the British throne. In tradition with the Hanoverian kings, George did not have a good relationship with his father, perhaps due to his lavish lifestyle. George was forced to marry his cousin, Caroline of Brunswick, to settle his debts. They married in April 1795 at the Chapel Royal in St. James's Palace. Their marriage was unhappy from the beginning, and they had only one child, Charlotte, in 1796. After the birth of Charlotte, they separated. George attempted to divorce Caroline after he himself became king, but was unsuccessful. In 1811, George became regent when his father was declared insane and was able to celebrate the victory of England over Napoleon in 1815. George succeeded his father in 1820 at the age of 57 and traveled to Hanover, where he was also king. George excluded his wife from his coronation in July 1821 at Westminster Abbey, but she had traveled to London to be accepted as queen consort and fell ill. Caroline died in August 1821, convinced she had been poisoned. Their daughter, Charlotte, died in 1817 during childbirth. During his later years as Prince Regent, George had become obese from excessive banquets and drinking, and he rarely appeared in public. He spent the last of his years as king secluded at Windsor Castle. By 1824, his corset had a waist of 50 inches. George died on the 26th of June, 1830, of numerous health issues. He was buried at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. His brother, William IV, succeeded him as king. Interesting fact, in 1821, George IV was the first British monarch to visit Scotland since 1650. Eleanor of Aragon was born on the 20th of February, 1358, to Peter IV of Aragon and Eleanor of Sicily. She was Peter's youngest child and only daughter. In June 1375, Eleanor married John I of Castile as a peace agreement between the two kingdoms. They had two sons, future Henry III of Castile and future Ferdinand I of Aragon, who claimed the throne through his mother. Eleanor died on the 13th of August in 1382, after giving birth to her only daughter, also named Eleanor. Margaret Plantagenet was born on the 14th of August, 1473, to George, Duke of Clarence, and Isabel Neville. Her paternal uncles included Edward IV and Richard III of England, and her maternal grandfather was Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, also known as the Kingmaker. Margaret's mother died when she was 3 years old, and just 2 years later, her father was executed for treason in a plot against his brother Edward IV. When Edward died in 1483, Richard claimed the crown as Richard III. Richard was defeated at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, and Henry VII emerged as King of England, beginning the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII then had Margaret's brother Edward sent to the Tower of London, since he was a potential York claimant to the throne. Margaret was married to Sir Richard Pole, a cousin of Henry VII, in 1487. By 1505, she was a widow with 5 children to support and no income or inheritance. She spent the next 4 years in poverty, living at Syon Abbey. When Henry VIII became king in 1509 and married Katherine of Aragon, Margaret was appointed one of her ladies-in-waiting. By 1512, she was granted her family title of Countess of Salisbury and received some lands of the earldom. With income provided by the lands, she became one of the wealthiest peers in England. In November 1538, Margaret, her eldest son, and a cousin were arrested for an attempt to overthrow Henry, known as the Exeter Conspiracy. Margaret was stripped of her lands and titles. She was then known only as Margaret Pole. She was held in the Tower of London for 2.5 years. To rid himself of any potential claimants to the throne, Henry ordered her execution. Margaret was executed by beheading on the 27th of May, 1541. One eyewitness account said that the executioner was a blundering youth who literally hacked her head and shoulders to pieces in the most pitiful manner. She was 67 years old. Katherine of York was born on the 14th of August, 1479, at Eltham Palace to Edward IV of England and Elizabeth Woodville. She was their 9th child and 6th daughter. She was considered a potential bride for John of Aragon, son of Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, and James Stuart, son of James III of Scotland. However, Katherine married William Courtenay in a marriage arranged by Henry VII of England, her brother-in-law, in 1495. They had 3 children, though not all lived to adulthood. Katherine and William were regularly at court, and she was a chief mourner at her sister, Elizabeth of York's funeral in 1503. Her husband was charged with treason in 1504 for his dealings with Edmund de la Pole, but was pardoned in 1509 and restored at court in 1511 by Henry VIII. William died in 1511, and Katherine took a vow of celibacy in July of that year. Katherine enjoyed a good relationship with her nephew Henry VIII and was godmother to his daughter, future Mary I of England. Katherine died on the 15th of November, 1527, at 48 years old. She was the last of her siblings to die. She was buried at St. Peter's Church in Tiverton with an elaborate funeral. Sometime between 1310 and 1315, Philippa of Hainault was born on the 24th of June to William I, Count of Hainault and Joan of Valois. She was one of 8 children born to her parents. In 1326, Philippa was betrothed to Prince Edward of England, when his mother, Isabella of France, attempted to get support from her father to depose her husband, Edward II. Philippa and Edward III of England were married in January 1328, almost a year after his accession to the throne of England. In 1346, she acted as regent while her husband was gone from England and led a successful battle against the Scots. Philippa gave birth to 13 children, though not all lived to adulthood. Through her sons, Lionel of Antwerp, the first Duke of Clarence, John of Gaunt, first Duke of Lancaster, and Edmund of Langley, first Duke of York, she is ancestress to the royal houses fighting the Wars of the Roses in the 15th century. Philippa died on the 15th of August, 1369, at Windsor Castle, and was buried at Westminster Abbey. Edward III died 8 years later and was buried next to her. Anne of Austria was born on the 16th of August, 1573, to Charles II of Austria and Maria Anna of Bavaria. In May 1592, she married Sigismund of Poland. Anne was denied entry at the Polish border by nobles who were upset at the Austrian-Habsburg alliance. She escaped the guards and entered Krakow, where she was crowned Queen of Poland. In 1594, Anne was also crowned Queen of Sweden. Anne and Sigismund had 5 children, but only one son would live to adulthood. She died during childbirth on the 10th of February, 1598. Richard of Shrewsbury was born on the 17th of August, 1473, as the 6th child and second son to Edward IV of England and Elizabeth Woodville in Shrewsbury. He was created Duke of York in May 1474, starting the tradition that the second son of the reigning monarch would be created Duke of York. In 1478, at 4 years old, he married 5-year-old Anne de Mowbray, 8th Countess of Norfolk. He was created Duke of Norfolk through his wife's family. Anne died in 1481. Richard's father died in April 1483, making Richard heir presumptive to his elder brother, now Edward V. However, in June 1483, their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, declared that all of Edward IV's children with Elizabeth Woodville were illegitimate and removed them from the line of succession, thus making himself king. Their uncle, now Richard III, kept young Richard and his brother in the Tower of London, where there were no sightings of the brothers after the summer of 1483. They are known as the Princes in the Tower, and their true fate has never been uncovered. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of This Week in Royal History. If you love listening to this show, please consider heading over to Patreon and becoming a patron. Your support over on Patreon really helps this podcast grow. Head over to patreon.com/tutorsdynasty for more information and how you can get exclusive content, early releases, and commercial-free access. There's going to be a lot of new content added very soon. Also, I recently returned from a trip to England and am planning a tour next year. If you'd like to join me on this tour, please send me an email at rebecca@tutorsdynasty.com, or you can contact me through social media. You'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, where else? Threads, TikTok, all the regular places. Just send me a message and I'll get you more information. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Rebecca Larson. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.